In this lecture, we are going to be diving deeper into our implicit and explicit memory systems. Now, just to touch base again on what the implicit memory is and what the explicit memory is, the implicit memory is any kind of information that you remember on an unconscious level, whereas your explicit memory is more on the conscious and intentional level, where you force yourself to remember certain bits of information. Now, when we talk about our explicit memory, we can be talking about a lot of verbal or non-verbal material. It can be an idea, it can be sound, it can be an image, a sensation, an odor, or a word. It is through this memory system that our external world processing is formed. Now, our explicit memory can be divided into two subcategories of memory systems that we also talked about: our episodic memory and our semantic memory. And in case you don't remember what those two terms mean, our semantic memory is usually related to generalized facts that we know, whereas our episodic memory is more intimate and it's related to our own personal experiences. So by default, if we want to improve our explicit memory, we have to work on our episodic and semantic memory. Picture it as a system, as a building, a structure, where the explicit memory system is the top, and it is held by two pillars, the episodic memory and the semantic memory. The stronger those two pillars are, the stronger the entire structure is. Now, our episodic memory depends on a lot of different factors when it comes to acquisition, storage, and recalling. The first factor that can influence our episodic memory is the level of emotional connection. If you close your eyes and think about some deep personal experiences, the first ones to pop in your head are usually experiences filled with emotions. Moreover, something else that can help store systems and information in our episodic memory is the amount of focus and concentration we invested. When you are really concentrated and focused on specific bits of information that are, of course, personal, you are more likely to remember and, of course, acquire and store the information. And something that can increase your focus and concentration, and therefore your episodic memory and eventually your explicit memory, is to use your sensory perception properly. Let's take an example. You are trying to remember that time when you went to the airport to greet your father, and all what you focused on is seeing him, how he went out, how you greeted him, how you guys were in the car talking. But if you focus on different factors related to your sensations and your perception, if you focus on what kind of perfume he was wearing, and you actually concentrate on your senses, the next time you smell this perfume, you might remember this certain experience. If you had your earphones plugged in and you were listening to a certain song as soon as he came out, most likely when you listen this song again and try to see what it reminds you of, it will remind you of this particular experience. If the air conditioning system was too strong and you felt cold, your hands were cold, this is you adding on a linking chain in the memory system related to the specific episodic memory or personal experience. And if while you're waiting for him, you went and bought a bag of chips or a chocolate bar, and you were trying it for the first time and now it's your favorite chocolate bar, if you remember the first time you tried it, you will always link it to this personal experience. So if we mix all of these together, this personal experience might be recorded, acquired, and stored a lot better than it would have been if you only used your visual perception. And let's add to that the emotional factor. Not only did we focus and concentrate on all our different visual perceptions of the memory and also all the different sensory systems involved, but we also invoked a lot of emotional responses in our system. You will alert your brain that this is a memory that is crucial, that is important. This is an episodic memory that you want to store and recall later on. So the best way for you to improve your episodic memory is first, try as much as possible to invoke an emotional connection. Make sure that your concentration is very well sharp. And third, make sure to use all the different senses and perceptual sensations that you can use to enhance the acquisition of the information, the storage, and ensure a better recalling ability. Now, the other pillar of our explicit memory is our semantic memory. And as we said, this is the memory system responsible for the acquisition, storage, and recalling of general facts and knowledge. All the general information that you know, that a cat would hiss at you when it's upset, that Michael Jordan is a basketball player, that Steve Jobs founded Apple, that fast food is bad for you, all of those are factors and information stored in your semantic memory system. And our semantic memory can range from very strong, where you're able to recall the information, to average and then weak. Now, to improve our semantic memory, there are a lot of things we can do or try. And the first thing is using a meaning-based elaboration, where you're basically connecting the information or knowledge you're trying to acquire or that you acquired to a self-referenced experience. And one way or another, you are linking your episodic and your semantic memory. You can leverage the emotions, the concentrations, and the sensory perception of your episodic memory to improve your semantic memory. Now, another thing you can use is elaborative interrogation, where you will ask yourself questions during the learning process to explain the logic, the structure, the general explanation, and the problem solution factors related to the specific semantic memory. Moreover, we can use some other systems that we also talked about or will talk about throughout this course. The use of imagery, basically supplementing all the language-based information with different mental images, shapes, and icons, which can also be related to the use of mnemonic devices. This combination of verbal and at the same time visual imagery representations. This involves a lot of different subsystems, such as keyword systems, the peg word methods, the method of loci, and of course, we're going to talk about all of these throughout the course. And finally, using associations based on categories. Using the leverage of spatial, environmental, specified characteristics, imagery, sensational perceptions, and linking them and associating them to the information you're trying to store can also be a huge beneficial factor. Now, on the other hand, we're also going to be talking about our implicit memory. And as we said, when we talk about implicit memory, we are talking about this unconscious-based automatic memory system. This implicit memory system is formed on the basis of past experiences and learning. We can talk about our procedural memory, which enables us to perform a lot of different physical activities or actions: walking, running, shooting a basketball, riding a bike, driving a car. We are basically talking about motor sensory integration systems related to our implicit memory, our past experience, and our learning. Another part of our implicit memory is also known as priming. It is an unconscious association that would help us recognize certain amount of information. The use of pictures, shapes, words, or any kind of stimulus to reorganize and form the bigger picture is what we mean by this priming system. You link the color blue to the sky or to the ocean. You link the yellow color to the sun or sunshine. You link the white color to clouds. And lastly, we have the habit memory system, which is also linked to our implicit memory. This is different than the procedural memory system, where the procedural memory is based on a certain procedure we're learning, performing, and then acquiring on an unconscious level. Whereas the habit memory doesn't have to follow a procedure. It is a repetitive habit that by force of repetition becomes unconscious. So also, to improve our implicit memory, we need to focus on these three subsystems: improving your procedural memory by learning certain procedures and applying them until you acquire this skill on an unconscious level; using your priming system, where you associate information you want it to be based in your unconscious mind to information that you consciously recognize and associate with. And lastly, our habit memory, which is to repeat a certain habit over and over again for it to become an inseparable part of your implicit memory. And this brings us to the end of this lecture.